Namaskar and very good morning to all of you and welcome to the Parallel Technical Session 17. So it is my pleasure to welcome the chairperson Dr. H.S. Mandal, co-chair Dr. Samal, the keynote speaker Professor Dr. Chandan Ghosh and all the technical presenters. So before I hand over the session to chair and co-chair, let me briefly introduce them. Dr. H.S. Mandal, the chairperson of this session, obtained his MSc Tech and PhD in Applied Geophysics from IIT ISM Dhanbad. He also acquired his postgraduate diploma in seismology and master's in disaster mitigation from Japan. Presently, he is a senior scientist in the National Center for Seismology, New Delhi, under Ministry of Earth Sciences, Government of India. He has more than total 26 years of research experience in the field like seismology, geophysics, meteorology, groundwater, and disaster mitigation. He published several research papers in this field of seismology, groundwater, geotechnical engineering, geosciences, etc. in international and national peer-reviewed journals. He has vast experience in the field of geotechnical and geophysical studies for computation of seismic microsonation and soil liquefaction studies. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
The co-chair of the session, Dr. Manoranjan Samal, obtained his MTech from NIT Rourkela and PhD from IIT Roorkee, Department of Earthquake Engineering, and postgraduate diploma in disaster management from IGNOU. He worked as a faculty member in different institutions and academic administrative positions under the Directorate of Technical Education, Government of Orissa for nearly 30 years. And also he has field experience at the CPWD. He authored 7 technical books and manuals and published several papers in technical journals and conferences. He was also associated with Open Distance Learning Program in the field of engineering management and remote sensing under IGNOU and ISRO IIRS program as program in charge and coordinator. He also acted as a nodal officer for AICTE textbook writing in regional language for Odisha state. Welcome you, sir. Now with this brief introduction, I hand over the session to chair and co-chair, please.
Thank you, Dr. Srivasalji. Very good. Our biodata and everything you have been explained briefly. Now, good morning, all of you. Now I have to be say here that we have the time between 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. and we have about 5 papers here. Including our SOP lecture will be given by Professor Chandan Ghosh. So I have to be explain what are the papers here. So there are papers are examination and appraisal of the liquefaction vulnerability between the Idris and Bollinger method and András-Tocqué method by Manali Patel, Sardar Vallabhbhai National Institute of Technology, Surat, India. And next paper, case studies on pre-shaking and re-liquefaction potential for different earthquakes in Japan by Gautam Padmanabhan, Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee, India. And paper number 821, effect of CSR on liquefaction response of Enori sand by Aparna Srivastava, Indian Institute of Technology, Gandhinagar. And 835 assessment, so paper number 835, assessment of liquefaction potential based on SPT data by using machine learning approach by G. Sunil Kumar, National Institute of Technology, Rourkela, India. Paper number, last paper, that 863, liquefaction potential of ash pond using SPT by Jitin P. Jakaria, Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee, India. Hope all these paper presenters here today. Yes, am I correct?
Yes. All are here.
Okay. Now I have to be welcome. Before I have to welcome to our guest lecture provided by the Professor Chandan Ghosh. Now I have to be it is my privilege to explain. It is my privilege and honor to facilitate to 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 explain about the biodata of the Professor Chandan Ghosh sir. Chandan Ghosh sir is an I already told that he is a renowned scientist. Okay, renowned scientist, engineer, and disaster management in all respective fields. So whatever I will say here, that may be less, but anyway I have to continue to say at these forums norms. Okay, so he served faculty of engineer at IIT BHU, and he did postgraduate research in Japan and was on some December, sorry, I have not listened to seeing that. Department Acha. Postdoctoral research in Japan and was a deputation to IIT Jammu from September 2019 to December 2020, where he served as a dean of student welfare. Oh, it is very good, nice, sir. He worked in the area of the earthquake geotechnology, reinforced earthquake, seismic microzonation, ground improvement technique, geosynthetics, and bioengineering measure for sustainable development. He has published more than 135 research papers in reputed journal, conferences, proceedings. As a recognition to his seminal contribution, received Leonard Prize for the best doctorate thesis in 1993. Great, sir. CIDC Visakhapatnam awarded 2013 based on IGS Sri H.C. Verma Golden Jubilee Award 2013, Lifetime Achievement Award 2019, Indian Geotechnical Society Delhi chapters. So use there maybe here there is some brief he has mentioned, and I am also the student and I have learned many things from Professor Chandan Ghosh, and not me. I think many of like me within this conference who are attending, they also have learned from Professor Chandan Ghosh. Now today we want to again learn. He became being a teacher here as a professor of Ministry of NIDM, National Institute of Disaster Management, and I have also many times attended with his lecture and learned many things. Now today I welcome to Professor Chandan Ghosh with my co-chair Manoranjan and myself here. So may I welcome to Professor Chandan Ghosh from IIT Jammu. It may be say NIDM. Okay, Professor Chandan Ghosh from NIDM to deliver lecture on reconstitution of liquefaction sustainability in soils. Sir, you are most welcome to present your lecture and will be as a student here today.
Okay, very good morning. The chair, Dr. Himanshu Shekhar Mandal, for making this occasion not by words but by expectation and inspiration that you have showered over your few words, and that makes me really going back to the basics of engineering and applied technology, I would say. So today's presentation, it is a experiment in my room mainly, which was conducted by one of the students and also in a laboratory that I would like to show that how simple can be an experiment, talking so much, researching so much, and also knowing so much about the liquefaction. And I'm thankful to the organizer of this 7th International Conference on Geotechnical Earthquake Engineering and Soil Dynamics by ISET, Roorkee, which Dr. Sivalsa and Dr. T.G. Sitaram and Ravi Jakka, who are always connected and always a source of inspiration for me to come back to the academics again and again. Thank you, Sival sir, for being so much dynamic, which keeps my willpower also dynamic always beyond COVID or beyond COVID effect. So reconstitution of liquefaction susceptibility in soil, this sort of experiments were never done in a laboratory. It is done in my office room, and also in one of the HYCO, you know, the Jitendra Singh, who is no more, but we conducted this test in his lab, not lab, I would say, manufacturing hub in Narayana, Delhi, with the help of one of the students, Supratim Bhomik. So I'm going to present it, which was done more than 6 years back, but still not published. That is the lacuna that we can see. So reconstitution of liquefaction, let me go back to the background because there are more 4 or 5 presentations will be there. Just I wanted to highlight, especially over here, that how this started even much before most famed 1964 earthquake. Even it has been there from since the civilization started. But when we got, just I wanted to highlight over here, even our Mahatma Gandhi visited there, Champaran area, that how Bihar Nepal earthquake has shaken and what kind of scenario that it has created for several kilometers. Even 1897 earthquake in our India, that it has got several signatures. 1950 also, several signatures are there, which are there in the memoirs of Indian, say, Geological Journal or Indian Geology Society, that in their memoirs. So, but things have been discovered, as we know, in our academic world, 1964 onward in Niigata. But before that, I wanted to mention that even 1950, 1934, 1944 in earthquake, in Fukui earthquake in Japan also, at that time, the word didn't come that much famous. But when things happened in 1964 in Niigata, Alaska, and many other places, and also signatures of damages and academic research mitigation pursuits are significant, yet failure of some of the most engineered structures during 1971 San Fernando Dam, or even during Kashmir earthquake recently, or even in the hilly area, that what has happened in the recent Nepal earthquake, or even this year April 29th earthquake in Assam, which has given some signature. So it is as old as hills, but our understanding getting renewed every day, every moment in this area, especially 1964 onward. So this scenario is known, is an engineered structure, but of course, even now also we cannot assure, but we have to use some other materials to ensure such kind of fill, that engineered fill, to use some other geosynthetic kind where it can have a release of drainage, release of pore pressure. So here, such kind of things that happen even in 2005 in Kashmir earthquake, that see that what are the signature that it has given, where the study is unending, and the signatures here like this, there are several, more than 2,000 such things were counted only, not research, because nature is same, but in hilly area, our understanding about the liquefaction, that which is happening, basic is same, but exploring this, solving the problem is our main aim. So from that count, we would say that there are many such reports are available, even Muzaffarabad earthquake. So, but this is the most recent one that in April that we have seen, which is more than 100 kilometers away from the Guwahati. Even then we have got, because Brahmaputra river basin is there. And the most important signature is this, that where structure didn't fail, but liquefaction has occurred. So that has opened up everything, many things, especially after 1969, 70 onward, the SPT-based, CPT-based liquefaction study. I'm not going into that detail. I directly go into that what inspired us to go for such kind of experimental study to visualize the liquefaction in a most ordinary manner, but with the fundamentals which are clear. So I go there. This is most of the important thing that that investigation they did, which is available in the literature in 1964 after this earthquake, that why it has gone wrong. Most of the cases, things happen like previously some of the slides, reasoning back analysis, saying that this pier has bent this way or that way, reason, lateral spreading, the new word came up, and we have done a number of such studies in centrifuge, shake table to recreate this situation, and also changing the codal guidelines in Japan and elsewhere. And so many centrifuge study recreating this one has redefined our codal provisions also. But codal provision redesigning as well as taking care of such thing with such kind of retrofitting measure or such kind of measures like these, especially after 2001 Japan earthquake or 1989 earthquake in Loma Prieta earthquake, many bridges have to be strengthened. But putting something like this is the most attractive one, taking preparedness measures for the future earthquake, which is the direct application into our structure, such kind of structure that which cannot be just neglected or denied or kept away from our attention. So such kind of revelation, especially this one, is known, and many such laboratory study, and also especially that cyclic triaxial test, which is very costly, very time consuming, but yet very much fundamental to understand the liquefaction. So far so about the science of liquefaction is known, understood, but application part and making it more simpler way of experiment is to be looked into. So most of the researchers successfully employed laboratory testing and theoretical analysis started from 1964 earthquake, especially 1969 onward, based on a field penetration test, and then crucial conclusion made and whether it is liquefiable or not. But there are again in situ liquefaction study is also being done, that instead of saying that indirectly based on SPT, CPT or BPT data, rather go for SCPT test to whether liquefaction is occurring or creating liquefaction in situ. But these are very, very fundamental as well as costly, as well as they are more positive, and rather understanding becomes more clear rather than indirectly, directly causing liquefaction has attracted many of the researchers in this area. So in spite of the analysis, mechanism involved in the resulting behavior of soil is yet to be understood to a larger extent. But still, that will keep on. 1964 onward, we have been doing, we'll keep on doing that. So there are many things are happening, retaining wall failure, floating of buoyant and buried structure. So many such, again, I say that these are thousands and thousands of structure which are being documented, recorded, and reasoned out that yes, it is due to liquefaction. Just simply saying it is due to liquefaction doesn't satisfy us. We have to go for some particular measures to deflate or to reduce the pore water pressure, even to some extent where clogging occurs in many of the drainage, where they cannot function during that period. So in that declogging of the same in situ, also some of the measures which has not come much into the practice, especially when our say earth structure facing liquefaction in the liquefaction or earthquake prone area. So scope of the lab study is to capture liquefaction phenomena in sandy silty soil. 9 types of soil we have taken, particularly Yamuna sand. We have done seismic microzonation of where Dr. chair of this session, very much involved in the thick and thin of this microgenation study, making it to 10,000 scale, published in 2015. And initial internal excess pore water pressure measurement is one of the things during liquefaction. Just when liquefaction is happening, we do not have much of this live record except in some systematic laboratory study. Or even some of the system are in place, and then we have got now many of the IoT system to capture this, actually what is happening inside the soil. So there we have tried to go into that. So using open stand pipe placed inside loose soil specimen subjected to manual and dynamic excitation, which I'm going to give in detail. So an attempt to avoid using costly equipment, because recently, you know, our high-speed train contract is taken up, high-speed means bullet train from Surat to Bombay. There, every meter undisturbed sample is to be taken according to the specification given by the Japanese organization. And triaxial test, cyclic triaxial shear test, everything have to be done. If as per those specification along 500 plus kilometer, if all these tests are to be performed, it will take at least 10 years to complete the instrument if we establish even 50 laboratories in the country. So then what are the judgment and what are the simple things that we can still think of? There I'm going to take you. So an attempt to avoid costly in geotechnical engineering laboratory, yet coming out with excellent result and matching with our expectation, and time being taken out to achieve accuracy in test result. These are going to be explored in the following slides. Correlation with field is still the fantasy of science and research. Application and practice really is still limited. I think sky is the limit to explore in this area. So the inspiration for this work is whatever is happening, sand boiling, that these are happening, or these are the things that which are available in the literature. So we have taken out, or even seeing that how to recreate liquefaction in laboratory. This is the kind of things inspiration has come from here with the background that I wanted to say. So creating liquefaction effect by simply tamping in this manner. So and taking a 500 ml, just a Coca-Cola bottle or any kind of bottle, 500 ml plastic bottle, and 2000 ml bottle, and also a 5-liter plastic bucket or container which is transparent, where we can see, visualize, because thing is visualization, what is exactly happening there. And measuring excess pore water pressure is in terms of increase in water column in the small 0.5 millimeter stand pipe which is placed inside. That is what that equivalent to pore water. Whatever water height is increasing, which is placed inside the soil, that is being measured. So soil is taken here, different types of soils are taken and grain size analysis is being done. All indicates that there are some clay soil also taken, stone dust also taken just to measure. Clay soil doesn't liquefy. Even some stone chips are also given. Coarse sand is also taken. So there are 9 different variety doing the same series of experiment, and all are being shown over here. Stone dust and Jamuna sand, and one from Calcutta, one from 2 soils from other river sand is also taken. So these are all local names given over here. Fly ash is also taken because it is very simple. I have to use only bottle which is freely available. Fly ash is available nearby. So fly ash, stone dust, clay, pebbles, Badarpur well-graded sand, which is used in our most of the household purpose. Then 2, because the researcher, the student belongs to Tripura, so he got 2 sand from Tripura, Huai coarse sand and Gomti coarse sand near Agartala, and then also from Calcutta. And finally, we wanted to see that what Yamuna fine sand, we have used, and we are going to show this. So these are all written over there, and just things are arranged in this manner. 1, 2, 4, 5, 9 bottles are there. The type of soil which is described over here, it is all pasted over here, and it is simply a centimeter graph paper which is pasted here. And so these are stone dust, clayey soil, and Yamuna sand. It is all written over here. And here in this case, we did not put any kind of pore water pressure device. We didn't put anything like that, but simply tamping it of this bottle, putting the water, keeping the cap closed, and there are some plastic balls are given. Plastic means rubber balls are given to ensure that in this much of sand, whenever preparing the soil, this specimen, it will be the loosest condition if we make this manner, and the ball that which we have put inside, it should be embedded into the soil that we have taken. So in order to ensure that, so here tamping versus soil height, as I said, height reduction is connected to the pore pressure increment, but here we have not measured the pore pressure. So here simply how much is the height reducing when loose soil is tamped like this. So that much is being recorded here. And when we have taken a 2-liter bottle, here you see open cap, but each of the bottle is having a standpipe which is 0.5 millimeter internal diameter, placed inside at the bottom, and also it is kept inside at the center. Generally, this is the height, it is kept at the center. That pipe is kept inside at the center where the arrow is showing, so that whenever liquefaction type of things will be happening due to vibration, so it will give more or less a representative value with minimal impact of the boundary. So, and also you can see a colored ball which is pinned up with a iron, it is you can say pin, which is taken from the market, and its weight is such that it keeps this ball floating along with that standing on the loose soil. So it represents the buildings. It represents the buildings that which is overground, which will be subjected to liquefaction. You can see this variation. I have many video, but I'm not showing over here. But whenever this sample is prepared, there are 2 such balls which are heavy enough, so they are kept inside whenever sample is being prepared. So at the same time, which we are trying to reconfigure, that whenever this is subjected to tamping or vibration table, both the experiment we have done, then this will come down, measure that using this graph paper. This will come down, and whichever ball are embedded inside, they will come up, which can be visually can be seen. At the same time, whenever at that moment this standpipe is affixed with this, so we have taken a constant video record of these things. Constant, very close CCTV camera is fitted over here, rather than taking it, because all of them are under same condition, their vibration is being done. So at same condition, taking all the 7 or 8 reading manually by seeing that is not possible. So it is all video record has been taken. From the video record, whatever is the pore pressure developed, which is coming through this above this level, is considered as the extra height of water equivalent to measuring pore pressure that which is developed during liquefaction, which is due to manual tamping or opening the cap with open cap or with closed cap. All these things have been captured and being evaluated in the following diagrams. So soil height, because this height is also measured here, how much it has come down, because these plastic balls you see after liquefaction, they have not plastic, I would say rubber ball, they have come up, which you can see visually, they have come up, and these have come down. So all being measured, how much they have come down, how much this loose soil for each tamping has come down. All are being, with each tamping, here these are the tamping count, tamping number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Whereas in this case, it is only 4, 5, 6 is enough because specimen is smaller. Here it is 15, 16 manual tamping, even 18 tamping has been done uniformly for all tests. So in the closed cap condition, you can see here cap is closed. So all these things are being plotted. Here you can see that with this simple experiment, we are able to measure the pore pressure variation, water height before and after. Everything can be measured over here. Similarly, water fluctuation versus number of tamping, these are being recorded for each of the type of soil.
Oh, sir, you are 9 minutes remaining, sir.
Yeah. Pore water pressure in open bucket. We have taken also 5-liter open bucket transparent where 3 different diameter pipes are also given there. So we have done manual as well with not manual with a hammer, because this cannot be done by this kind of tamping. So we put a hammer over here with standard hammer, with standard whatever, say that not much variation, that depends on not much variation would be there. Then we could see that what is the pore pressure rise while variation of the pipe diameter is done. So with each pipe diameter, how much variation is, that is also being measured in this simple experiment. So here you see these are all systematic arrangement before testing is being done, and this is after testing that you see that water that which came out, which we know and it happens. But measuring this, 3 pipes are placed here at 3 different heights to check that what is the relative variation of the pore pressure being developed during this kind of experiment. So here you see 1 millimeter, 2 millimeter, 2.5 variation water height, and colored ink also placed inside so that they can be made different. So all these observations were made and results are plotted with this hammer height. And also we check in a standard jar that what is the if sand height is variable. You see this is this much, this is this much, this is this much. So how liquefaction can occur, because we know that overburden effect is important consideration. So here we have done this type of test also to check that how up to what height or overburden liquefaction may occur or may not occur, that we have noted. So capturing excess pore water pressure during dynamic excitation. So these are all 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 dynamic excitations in HYCO laboratory. We have gone there and 2 cases taken, and where initial condition is same, vibration given at each set of initial conditions. So test conditions are described here, but both in open and closed cap condition, pore water pressures were measured in 2-liter container only, which I have shown few of them. And this is that simply our own sand compaction where relative density of sand we make it, where we can control amplitude and vibration. So in the laboratory, and we checked its sensitivity, frequency versus how much RPM versus frequency, which is fairly steady. So with all these fixtures and everything that we have checked that calibration, or you can say the bottles are kept all together with CCTV camera to keep it record. So what I would say that further work is also necessary. Things are not as simple as we thought, but there are many ifs and buts are there. Accuracy and other things, many times we may say that it should not be that much, but in some cases, accuracy is also important. But it is enough for the last 60 years or so to know the science of liquefaction, but recognizing it and where it is going to happen, rather than taking that, yes, these are the area according to seismic microzonation map, liquefaction opportunity area, or liquefaction is not going to occur. That so that part is one, but going for direct liquefaction measuring is really helpful. So variation of soil and then frequency, these results that we have taken, all these results, of course not much time to describe, but nature of void ratio reduction is equivalent to specimen height reduction. These are all plotted there, and height versus frequency and amplitude frequency, and also container with excess pore water pressure in the large container is also shown over here, and also various level of sophistication. We tried 50 millimeter from the bottom of the container at different height. It has been tried. 4 such pipes are placed so that they can capture liquefaction. 50 mm from the bottom, 100, 150, 200 mm from the bottom along this. So those are set during experiment preparation, and results are being presented over here. So 50 mm, you see the drastic reduction. With time, you see how it is being reduced. And so how these are the arrangement made before and after. So due to vibration as well as stamping by hammer is also done. And so pore water pressure variation, which is being with frequency, whatever frequency that we have given, because we know that earthquake frequency vary maximum, say 15 Hz, 5 to 15 Hz. So we also kept these things in mind, that our frequency variation in the laboratory should be within that, because that is the dangerous 5 to 20 or maximum 5 to 50 or whatever it is. So in that range, that how bottom 50 millimeter from the bottom and bottommost one, and how they are varying pore water variation. Of course, in millimeter, it is being expressed in millimeter. So conclusion is experiments on large bucket gave full understanding of the liquefaction phenomena, in which pore water fluctuations were measured and presented with duration of vibration input within the standard range of earthquake that it affects our structure. And underground utility responded by lighter and heavier balls, lighter rubber ball and heavier balls, and showed marked example of liquefaction induced buoyancy effect. And then effect of overburden was tried by keeping the object at fixed level, but under the present context, no liquefaction effect could be seen. And however, in all the tests, accepting low energy input, say at amplitude 0 and 5 Hz, Yamuna sand taken from Delhi showed the marked liquefaction. So I want to say finally so much so about probing science. Of course, proving science and testing, checking, laboratory, direct, and many sophistications that we have done. Science of pore water during liquefaction is really known to us. But what nature has to ordain to the mankind in the beginning of the slide, or thousands of such failures that have been taking place. So in that case, going in one direction, that knowing the liquefaction opportunity or liquefaction occurrence, and we have known that liquefaction will occur, but there is hardly any proof that where through microgenation or through such kind of laboratory and field study, liquefaction identification maps have been made. After earthquake has occurred, exactly in the same manner, liquefaction happens or not, geotechnical professional, we must look into those aspects that what we said or published, presented, experimented, evaluated as a liquefaction going to occur during actual earthquake in that region, how much actually due to the site conditions and other conditions, which often we cannot take care of in the ideal conditions in the laboratory, whether there should be some kind of matching in order to have our complete understanding about the liquefaction and its impacts on our earth structure. So in that regard, just only say that what nature is telling us, what nature has been telling us, we must go back to the nature as well, not saying that this is the exclusive one, but many such geostructure, earth structure, or many more such kind of scar that we are keeping in our construction. That like this is Jammu, that where this construction of highway is going on. But this where no retaining wall, nothing nailing, nothing is done. It is simply done by nature's omnious gift, that is a grass. So having able to stabilize something in this manner, I'm not saying that it is exclusive, but it has given us such learning. So the last slide is that we can change using this simple erosion control measure in our way of living and thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Very nice presentation. Real-time liquefaction hazard assessment. How to occur real-time. That many different soil you have to give in, and it is marvelous. I have seen that 2004 only one bottle you have been prepared and shown only one thing, but you have now about 9-10 bottles. So where this laboratory setup you have been kept, sir?
In my room.
Okay, very nice, sir. And I think that you have not leave any stone unturned for assessment of liquefaction studies, and it is really a very good and interesting for young researchers also, so they can know what is the phenomena of liquefaction and how it occurs and what are the different type of grain size, soil diameter and everything. Many factors are there, as well as the ground shaking vibrations is also very important. As you already described very briefly, that frequency of the earthquake is also another factor, and there is SPTN value and different factors are there. And so many hindrance things are also there, but you have achieved a very good goal, that you have demonstrated many things, and it is a very good presence, sir. I salute you, sir. Things. Now we have to be proceed for some questions. There, chat box. Is there any questions? That question we may answer at the last, because so many papers are here. Okay, so later we have to go the other papers. I think we have to proceed to the next papers. Okay, Sival sir, co-chair.
Yeah, yes sir, please.
Okay. So now may I invite paper number 771, that examination. What is the name? Manali Patel, Mrs. Manali Patel. Okay. Yes. So you have to be present here. Examination appraisal of liquefaction vulnerability between Idris Bollinger method and Andreas Stokes method. It's very good, nice paper, because SPTN value and I think CRF velocity, Anders and Stokes has been used. For Sardar Vallabhbhai National Institute of Technology, you are very good place. You start your presentation, madam.
Thank you very much, sir, for your kind introduction. So my today's topic is examination or analysis of existing subsurface exploration data for the assessment of liquefaction potential for the Ahmedabad city. And my co-authors are Dr. C.H. Solanki and Dr. Tejas Thakur. And starting with the introduction, these are my contents: introduction, mechanism, study region, motivations and need of study, what motivate me to do this study, then followed by the literature review, then site characterization, methodologies we have adopted, then results, conclusion and references. So starting with the introduction, as we all know that soil liquefaction occurs on the saturated or partially saturated soil, and it loses its strength and stiffness under the dynamic loading, causing it to behave like a liquid. So for the liquefaction to occur, the presence of groundwater table is necessary. The loose sediments and earthquake or any other shaking is required. And this is the mechanism behind the liquefaction. So soil grains in a soil deposit, the blue column, this blue column, this blue column shows the pore water pressure. Initially, the pore water pressure is low. When the earthquake occurs, when under any other dynamic loading, the pore water pressure may increase and the particle may lose its contacts. And that's how
Madam, you go ahead. Madam, you go ahead. These are the general phenomena everybody knows.
Okay, sir. These are the classic examples of the liquefaction worldwide. This is the seismic zone of zone 5. this is the seismic zone of Gujarat. Ahmedabad comes under the zone 3. So we need to assess the liquefaction. These are the ISR, Indian Seismological Research Institute report, and this shows the past earthquake data. And this is the study area, the Ahmedabad city. It falls under the zone 3. And historic seismicity of Ahmedabad is like it is near for in Cambay fault is near Cambay East, Cambay West, and San Narmada fault, which are very active fault. And due to Bhuj earthquake, Ahmedabad was also affected. So it is not only the near field, but also a far field source of earthquake. We need to study the anthropology of various aspects like area, coordinates, population of the city, and historical monuments and industries. So geological aspects such as the type of soil and the condition of Sabarmati River. The Sabarmati River in the Ahmedabad city, it originates from the Rajasthan's Debar Lake, and it carries the alluvial soil deposits. And the silty soil are the most prone to liquefaction. So in the Ahmedabad city, most of the soils are silty soil. Then the construction of the riverfront made the water table very high, and the recharge well was required as per the AMC guidelines. One recharge well at every 500 meter square area is necessary. And the upcoming construction, due to the high population, scarcity of land, the vertical construction on filled up soil, so many ponds, like 56 ponds in the city were filled up in the past years, and they have arranged the space for the apartment. So many of the buildings are standing on the sandy soil. So as per the Bureau of Indian Standard, the city falls under zone 3, which is the moderate zone of earthquake. That's why the liquefaction is necessary. So coming to the literature review, we have literatured various papers. I'm not going much into the detail. Soil characterization, as we all know that Ahmedabad is having silty soil. So most of the area is covered by silty soil and sandy clay. These are some site characterization we did. We collected the borehole data and the silty sandy soil is there. And this is the general phenomena. This is a general methodology for the assessment of liquefaction, that P ground acceleration magnitudes, the cyclic stress ratio and cyclic resistance ratio, and finally the factor of safety we can find out from that. And two methods we have adopted, the Idris-Bollinger method and the Andrews and Stokes method. Then comes to the results. I have taken one example. We did the liquefaction analysis of 88 area of Ahmedabad city, and from that I have took one example, and we did the detailed calculation for the from the fine content, from the hammer type, sampling method, type of sampler we have used, and we have applied all the corrections. And N160 CS, like clean sand equivalent, we have converted the SPT value to the clean sand equivalent, and shear wave velocity we have took from the various equations in the past that researchers have provided. Then this is the total pressure, effective pressure. Then we have found the CSR and CRR, and finally the factor of safety from these two methods. And we took the magnitude is as 7.7 Bhuj earthquake magnitude, and we took the peak ground acceleration as 0.16 G. And we have assumed that if water table arises at ground level, then we also calculate for that. That I have not included in that, but we have assumed that water table is at ground level, and we also did the calculation for the same. And this is the groundwater table scenario for the Ahmedabad city. You can see this is the urge groundwater table. Then we did the analysis, and these many areas are liquefiable. The factor of safety at 3 meter depth by this Andrews and Stokes method, and this 0 to 3 meter depth by Idris and Bollinger method. And these many areas are liquefied, and these red areas tend to liquefy. And then factor of safety distribution we did at 3 to 6 meter depth by this Andrews-Stokes method, and this Idris and Bollinger method, and the factor of safety we have found for this particular city. And this 6 to 10 meter depth, and similarly by 2 methods, and 10 to 15 meter depth, and this by 2 methods. So finally we comes to the conclusion that we incorporated 2 methods, that Idris and Bollinger 2010 and Andrews and Stokes method. In the central part you can see, when you have if you have seen the graph, the central part is tend to be more liquefied because of this riverfront Sabarmati river water table level, and some area are not liquefied, and liquefaction maps have been generated. This is a primary idea about the liquefaction, and so we can do the we can do the urban planning accordingly. These are my references, and if you have any questions.
Thank you, Manali. Mrs. Manali, you have presented in your actual time, and it is very nice and very good presentation, that SPT value you have been taken, and CRF velocity measurement you have taken. So these young scientists are doing a very good, marvelous job. But many questions is also there. But yes, I was about 5 years in Ahmedabad. Earlier I worked in Central Water Board. But you told that some groundwater level at 0.115 meter. But at that time, 60 meters below ground level water was there. Because,
yes, this is the Ursh groundwater table. During the monsoon, it will come up, and this groundwater table we have took.
Okay.
Not necessary.
That might be the improvement of the Sabarmati river construction, and state dams are there. That groundwater level increases.
Exactly, sir.
That might
exactly.
So I left that department 2003. So after that, so many progress has been developed. But many questions are there. Liquefaction occur up to 10 meters. So you have to address up to 10 meters also. Okay.
Yes, sir. I took up to the 15 meter depth.
15 meter, but you have shown 7.5 meter only.
No, sir. That is one bore log, and I got this bore log only from the 7.5 meter. Similarly, I collected the 88 areas bore log, and the bore log, you know, the limitation that consultancy don't provide much deeper depth and all this.
But this audience, if you present your that data in this audience, they will be happy.
Yes.
Explaining all the theory and mechanism, no needed. Only result what you have received, because this is the platform. Everybody is geoscientist, geotechnical engineer, liquefaction studies they are doing, and this is the main objective of this year. So you have done very good work. You have taken CRF velocity and SPT, but CRF velocity, there is some soil age is also required. But Paleos like Holocene age or Pleistocene age. So Andrews, they have been used. What type of age you have been taken here? Geological age.
Sir, I have not taken the geological age. Actually, the scientists before they have provided some SPT and shear wave velocity correlations that I have took, and that average I have taken for the better results. I have taken the average from those all equations.
So have you corrected your shear wave velocity with respect to the pressure?
No, sir. This is the analytical work only. I did not take any practical work. Actually, this is my master's work, and that I have presented. Due to the time constraint, I could not do the practicals.
Near future, you have to do this. It is a very good work, and your thought is very good. Actually, it is a very good thought. So you have to do it. Is a very good paper. It will come. And you have to publish many papers from this year.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, currently, I am doing the seismic hazard analysis for Bharuch region.
Okay.
In my PhD. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Now,
welcome, sir.
Some questions maybe come to the chat box. So that question maybe will ask to you. So you have to remain within this with us up to the end of this program. Okay.
Okay. Yes, sir. Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Thank you. Now, paper number 802. Now, may I invite Dr. Guathan Padmavan, sorry, I may be mistaken. Indian Institute of Technology. Okay, he just showed case study on pre-shaking and reliquefaction potential for different earthquake in Japan. Very good, nice paper. Please carry on. Welcome.
A very good morning to all. Myself Gautam, PhD research scholar from the Department of Earthquake Engineering, IIT Roorkee. Here to present the paper on the title Case Studies on Pre-Shaking and Reliquefaction Potential for Different Earthquakes in Japan, guided by Professor B.K. Maheshwari, IIT Roorkee. As in our study, we have considered two earthquakes for analysis. One is 2005 Fukuoka Ken Shiapo-oki earthquake occurred in Japan, and the second is the 2006 Kumamoto sequential earthquakes. So the objectives and motivation in general, liquefaction case studies are mostly limited to normal earthquakes, whereas the significance and the potential of sequential earthquakes and reliquefaction potential are rarely reported. In our study, we have considered two earthquakes of contrasting nature with different earthquake pattern, pre-shaking history, liquefaction history, and the earthquake damages associated due to liquefaction. This study is a first of its kind to compare the earthquake based on this pattern. Coming to the case study 1, this is the Kumamoto earthquakes occurred in 2006. It belongs to the category of sequential earthquakes. Three earthquakes of magnitude 6.5, 6.2 and 7.3 has occurred in the successive days in the Kumamoto region. In general, earthquakes with magnitude less than 6 are not considered for liquefaction analysis, as it doesn't have that much potential to create or induce liquefaction. But in our study, we have considered all the earthquakes which observed in the Kumamoto region in 2016 because as it has its significant potential in inducing the liquefaction resistance and to trigger reliquefaction. Coming to conclusion, a total of 1,157 earthquake events has been observed in the specified duration from a period of April 1 to May 31st. So we have listed out all the earthquakes based on the magnitude and has been shown in the table 2 for reference. And the same map which showing the occurrence of earthquakes in that region also shown in the figure based upon the USGS data. It is important to note here, before the occurrence of 2016 earthquake, Kumamoto region has a rich history in liquefaction and found to be licensed moderate to significant liquefaction vulnerable zone. Despite all the earthquake occurrences with three earthquakes of magnitude greater than 6, the damages reported associated with the Kumamoto earthquakes was found to be limited as compared to the previous earthquakes. According to the reports published by Mukonoki et al. In 2016, the occurrence of reliquefaction and the effect of seismic pre-shaking may be the hidden factor in inducing the in limiting the generation of excess pore water pressure and also in the development of the liquefaction resistance due to the densification effect or due to reliquefaction, and also the reorientation of sand particle which occurs due to the effect of seismic pre-shaking. Coming to the case study 2, Fukuoka Ken Shiapo-oki earthquake, which occurred in 2005, which it's a single earthquake event of magnitude 7. As it is to be noted here, Fukuoka is not a seismically active zone as compared to the other parts of Japan. Despite this earthquake has free from seismic pre-shaking and also has reduced liquefaction susceptibility. And it is to be noted here that there is no presence of foreshocks and aftershocks in this observed earthquake. Still, despite these factors, the damages observed during the Fukuoka earthquake is found to be higher and results in a lot of economic loss and human life, as reported by Nakase et al. 2006. Coming to the discussion of this finding, despite the larger number of earthquake occurrences in 2016 Kumamoto earthquake, the damages are found to be limited compared to the 2005 earthquake. So this invites the attention of researchers to work on this particular area. So what are the factors that hinder the generation of liquefaction and increases the resistance? Coming to the in our study, we have identified some parameters which could have a potential reason. The first is the presence of foreshocks and aftershocks. As per Elsekeli et al. 2014, based on his observation on field and experimental, he reported that any presence of foreshocks and aftershocks associated with the main shock event, it will be provide resistance to excess pore water pressure, and it results in the reduced liquefaction. Coming to the second parameter we consider is the effect of pre-shaking. As per database of Kumamoto earthquake, it is found that 3 earthquakes of magnitude greater than 6 has been observed, and seismic pre-shaking has been takes place. And it also, as per other experimental study, it is found that it will enhance the liquefaction resistance. And also similar report published by El Sekeli et al. In 2016 that this pre-shaking has the potential to increase the relative density, CPT resistance, and soil resistance against the mild to moderate shaking even. So in such case, this increased resistance may be associated due to this pre-shaking. Coming to the next parameter is the densification mechanism. As already reported, the occurrence of reliquefaction could be a possible factor to increase the density. As we know, as the density increases, the potential of liquefaction will get reduced. Experimental evidences were carried out by E et al. In 2018 and by myself in 2020 experiments based on uniaxial 1G shake table. We have induced seismic shaking in the similar pattern with increasing seismic shaking from 0.1G to 0.4G, and we have experimental evidence for these observed phenomena, that is a increased liquefaction resistance in the successive or reliquefaction phenomena. Coming to the earthquake shaking, as mentioned earlier, the Kumamoto region has a rich history of liquefaction, so this could also be a conclusive factor which could be resulted in the increased resistance as reported by Bhattacharya et al. In 2018. So the rich liquefaction history has induced some resistance to liquefaction and its associated damages as compared to the 2005 Fukuoka Kensiako earthquake, which is new to liquefaction, and damages was found to be higher in that region. So finally, some results published by Dobry et al. In 2019 shows that the pre-shaking, even though it costs for a shorter time and it may be of smaller earthquake event, it has its own influence in increasing the liquefaction resistance. And as per some experimental evidences presented by them, the pre-shaking event has a potential to improve the resistance to liquefaction, and as it results in the increasing sand density. So the limitation of this study is it can be applicable only to the specific site and those magnitude of earthquake, as rightly pointed out by the presenter, Professor Chandan Ghosh. So much more research has to be devoted in this area. Like in spite of earthquake magnitude, there are many other factors like pre-shaking, liquefaction history, and the reliquefaction has a significant potential in inducing the damage or to resist the damage. This paper will be helpful in analyzing and comparing the liquefaction history and pre-shaking effect, and also for planning any sort of ground improvement technique in such sites. Coming to the conclusions, this study is an attempt to consider some of the hidden parameters in inducing the liquefaction phenomena. So we stated that the mentioned parameters like pre-shaking, reliquefaction potential need to be considered in any earthquake analysis apart from the single earthquake case studies. So these successive earthquakes or combination of foreshocks and aftershocks has a significant influence in inducing the liquefaction and reliquefaction, and these parameters should be considered in the analysis for any sort of ground improvement studies. Thank you.
Thank you, Gautam.
Thank you, sir.
Gautam Padmavan, you have presented very nice. It is like a liquefaction that you can predict in a particular places. Am I right?
Sir, it is like comparing the two earthquakes of different pattern to analyze
yes. So can you say why you have chosen Japan only?
Sir, as we know, like Japan is very prone to liquefactions, earthquakes. So when we are looking for the, we have conducted some experiments. So when we are looking for the similar case studies which is observed for comparison, so we took these earthquakes.
But you can try for India also. You know, Sony sure. That liquefaction for Japan. In Assam and some Bhuj earthquake and some Tripura 2015. There is a earthquake on that places. So you try for that area also, and you predict something. It's very good, nice presentation. And can you say that like tsunami, that you can say 6.5 magnitude under sea tsunami may occur or predict? So can you say any magnitude that threshold magnitude can give liquefaction in a site?
Sir, normally more than 6.5 magnitude earthquakes.
No, but 5.7 magnitude also, Tripura also occurred. Tripura recently that earthquake occurred, okay, and liquefaction occurred. So you have to be estimate, predict that what magnitude, critical magnitude,
Sure,
that
sir.
liquefaction may occur in a particular places, favorable condition. Okay,
Sure, sir.
so that is a very good topic, and I thank you.
Sir.
Okay, thank
you,
you.
sir.
And some questions will come in chat box that you will be answer at the end of this session. Okay, so please bear with us.
Thank you,
okay.
sir.
Thank you. Next chapter, next presenter, Dr. Aparna Srivastav. Okay, she is from Indian Institute of Technology, Gandhinagar, India. Okay, and her topic is effect of CSIR on liquefaction response of NORI sand. Okay, please welcome Mrs. Dr. Aparna.
Okay, so good morning to everyone. I am Aparna Srivastav, and my today's topic of presentation is effect of gradation and stress ratio on liquefaction response of inert sand. So all of us know that liquefaction is a phenomena which is defined as a loss of shear strength of the soil on ground shaking due to development of excess pore water pressures equivalent to the confining stresses. There are many factors which affect the liquefaction potential of the soil, such as relative density, grain size, magnitude of stress amplitude and strain, loading conditions, etc. And out of those, the cyclic stress ratio is an important parameter which affects the liquefaction potential of the soil. So for the present study, 3 different grades of inert sand, that is S1, S2, S3 were used, which had varying particle size, that is S1 corresponds to 2 mm to 1 mm particle size, S2 corresponds to 1 mm to 500 micron, and S3 corresponds
can you adjust your camera? Madam, can you adjust your camera?
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay, welcome.
And S3 corresponds to 500 to 90 micron size. S4 and S5 grades, they represent the well-graded and poorly graded sand, which was prepared by mixing S1, S2, S3 in proportion as mentioned here in the figure. The right figure shows the grain size distribution of all the 5 grades of inert sands, and the below table shows the physical characteristics of the inert sand of all 5 grades. So for the present study, electromechanically dynamic cyclic sample shear apparatus was used. The specimen size was 70 mm diameter and 20 mm height, and the specimens were prepared at a 60% relative density using dry tempering technique. The procedure is as follows. First, the specimens were saturated by percolating deaid water from the bottom of the specimen at a seating pressure of 5 kPa, and followed by K0 consolidation at a vertical effective pressure of 100 kPa, and then the specimens were cyclically sheared at a different cyclic stress ratio, that is 0.1, 0.075, 0.05, 0.03, and at a frequency of 0.1 Hz for all the 5 grades of inert sand specimens. Now coming to the results and discussions, the figure shows the hysteresis response of all 5 grades of inert sand at a different cyclic stress ratios. So we can see that at a higher cyclic stress ratio, that is 0.1 and 0.075, a rapid and a large shear deformations were observed for all the 5 grades of inert sand. Also, we can see that the S3, that is red graph, at a CSR of 0.1 exhibited the highest total accumulated plastic strain. So that could be attributed because of the S3 lies in the range of fine sand gradation. So that can have a lesser frictional resistance as compared to the S1, which lies in the range of coarse sand particles. Also, we can see that the S4, which was well graded inert sand, they exhibited lesser shear deformations as compared to the S3 as well. So that can be because of the compact configuration of the inert sand under well-graded conditions. In case of lower cyclic stress ratios, that is 0.05 and 0.03, we can see that in case of 0.05, only S1 and S2 exhibited shear deformation of about 9%, whereas S3, S4, S5, they exhibited very less shear deformations. And however, in case of CSR of 0.03, all the specimens S1 to S3, S5 exhibited a very insignificant shear deformations. Moving on to the equivalent pore water pressure ratio. So liquefaction was defined in a manner that when RU, it is equivalent water pressure ratio became 1. So in case of CSR of 0.1 and 0.075, we can see that all of the specimens S1 to S5, they failed within 2 cycles itself. And almost there was no variation in the response of equivalent pore water pressure ratio for all the 5 grades in case of higher cyclic stress ratio. However, in case of small cyclic stress ratio, that is 0.05 and 0.03, the number of cycles to liquefaction got increased. And also we can observe that with increase in the fine sand content, that is in case of S3 compared to S1, the number of cycles to liquefaction increased. That can be because of the more number of point contacts in the fine sand particles. So now coming to the cyclic resistance ratio, which is defined as a cyclic stress ratio at a 20 number of cycles to liquefaction. So we can see that the CRR value corresponding to 20 number of cycles, it got increased with increasing the fine sand content and was higher for the well-graded sand. So we can say that the cyclic strength of the sand increased with increasing the fine sand particle size. Now coming to the dynamic parameters, that is shear modulus. So delta represents the cyclic degradation index, which is defined as a shear modulus at the nth number of cycles to the shear modulus at the first cycle. We can see that in case of 0.1 and 0.05, the major shear modulus needed at number of cycles. However, it became after that constant because the major shear deformation happened in the first cycle itself, and there was no change in the shear deformation, and it remained almost constant for the greater number of cycles. Therefore, in case of 0.1, the modulus degradation was almost constant after the second number of cycles. In case of 0.075 and 0.05, large cyclic degradation was observed after the first cycle. And also it got increased with increasing the fine sands content. In case of lower CSR values, that is 0.03, almost constant degradation was observed for the all 5 specimens. So that can be because there was a very insignificant shear deformation being observed in the hysteresis response, which led to the very constant type of modulus degradation in case of lower CSR values. Now coming to the damping ratio, which is defined as the energy dissipation of the soil during the plastic deformation. So we can see that at the higher CSR value of 0.1 and 0.075, the damping ratio was more pronounced till the second cycle only. Then it became constant. So the cause of it, because the major liquefaction of the specimens at 0.1 and 0.075 CSR happened within the 2 cycles itself, and later on there was no change in the shear deformation, and it was almost constant accumulation of shear strains were being observed. And in case of lower shear stress ratios, we can see that since there was overlapped hysteresis response being observed, which led to the constant damping ratios with the number of loading cycles. So these are the conclusions I have discussed. References. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Aparna. You have presented very nicely that it is a cyclic triaxial test. It is very nice.
Cyclic simple shear test, sir.
Cyclic triaxial test.
Simple shear, sir. Cyclic
Yes, yes, I know it. CSR, then you have estimated the effect of CSR value. But I want to say that what is the confining pressure you have been taken at 100 kilopascal?
100 kPa, yes, sir. Vertical water pattern of 100 kPa.
But anorexia, it is a very loose and maybe, but how it will be sustained within the sample? Can you say?
Sir, it was actually in cyclic simple shear test, we have just Teflon coated rings, which is like first of all, it is being membrane is put, and then the specimen is prepared using dry tamping technique in the mount in the that mold itself, and then the plunger is being down so that it gets like locked into it, and then it is being monotonically it is being tightened. So in this way, that the plunger and
You are saying
Specimen.
clean sand. Can it be mold? Clean sand, can it be mold? If you give some percentage of clay or seal, then it can be mold.
It was prepared by dry temping, sir, just in the mold itself, dry temping technique.
So back saturation you have done before that analysis.
Before sharing, we have saturated the specimen, then consolidation was done, and then
What is the back saturation percentage attained for the sample?
Sir, in this we have saturation process just like odometer test, like the water is being percolated from the bottom of the specimen, and then it is being taken from the top of the specimen. So we fix like 2 times volume of the water, specimen volume say V, then 2V water when comes out, then we say that yes, our specimen is saturated, just like cannot consolidation test, odometer test.
But can
so
you
the
say
process
that
of saturation is
CSR values you have been chosen, it is very less, 0.1, and then you go below 0.075 or 0.005, 0.05. But you know that CSR value is related to the magnitude. How you correlate the magnitude at that? That CSR value 0.1 corresponding, what magnitude you can consider?
What magnitude?
Of earthquake. Because liquefaction with respect to earthquake we have to be defined. Na? So
Yes,
can you explain it?
Sir, we have the formula like 0.65 something.
That is Taumac. Taumac you are calculating. Okay.
Yeah,
okay,
that is related to
that. It is a very nice presentation because it is a direct laboratory, soil laboratory test analysis. So it is very authenticated. So more information also needed, but it is very good. Thank you, Mr. Kapurna. Okay, carry on your research, further research work. Okay, in this area. Very good. Now we come to the next presenter, 835 paper number, assessment of liquefaction potential based on SPT data by using machine learning approach. It is very good machine language approach by Dr. G. Sunil Kumar, National Institute of Technology, Rourkela, India. So I think in machine learning language approach, it is a very new technology. So let you explain here.
Very good morning, everyone. My name is G. Sunil Kumar, and I'm here to deliver my presentation on assessment of liquefaction potential based on SPT data by using machine learning approach. So how do we actually visualize liquefaction? Usually, soil is said to be liquefied when it loses its shear strength, and this happens due to sudden increase in the pore water pressure, and obviously there will be decrease in the effective stress. So these are the few screenshots which are taken from after the earthquake in Central Sulawesi province of Indonesia. So introduction, usually we consider liquefaction when there is a very huge loss of life which happens at a disastrous level, and loss of property also. So during earthquakes, liquefaction is one of the major cause of damage, and we need to address it. So to avoid destruction, we need to address this problem of liquefaction, and the assessment and prediction of liquefaction on sandy soils has attracted considerable attention in recent years, specifically in soft computing techniques like artificial neural networks, support vector machines, genetic algorithms have been evolved with time. So my core emphasis in this presentation is to predict liquefaction based on SPT data by using various regression and classification techniques in RStudio. These are the various researchers who worked on ANN and SVM, RVM and genetic algorithms. So critical review. Till date, although there is a huge potential for R programming, especially to solve many soil-related problems by using various inbuilt packages. Till date, very little emphasis has been given to R in predicting and assessing geotechnical properties. So in the table shows how the R is having so many advantages compared with other soft computing techniques like artificial neural networks, support vector machines, and relevance vector machines. The B2B convergence speed, B2B, the relevance importance of various parameters, B2B principal component analysis, R is having an upper hand compared with other soft computing techniques. So my objective here is to assessment of the liquefaction potential based of soil based on SPT data using machine learning approach. So this is the methodology followed by R. R contains various built-in regression, classification, clustering algorithms. So here are the list of regression methods and the classification methods which are available in R. So there are on a broad aspect, the machine learning is split into supervised or unsupervised. Where in supervised we use labeled data, and unsupervised machine learning we use unlabeled data. And labeled data, well, like regression classification comes under labeled data, and clustering and PCA, which is principal component analysis, comes under unsupervised machine learning. So what are the various steps involved in R? So initially we'll define the problem, then we'll load the data, then we'll split the data into training and testing data set, and then we'll select a certain model, and then we'll try to predict the model by training the data set. And once the training is done, we'll test the data and various predictions are made. And once after the prediction of testing data set is done, we'll cross-validation of model is done. Like for k-fold and repeated cross-validation is done for particular models especially. And we compare different models using certain parameters like root mean square errors, R square, like coefficient of correlation, etc. And model refinement and model diagnosis is done. And finally, the implementation of model is also done. So these are the statistical summary of the parameters which I have considered, around 68 datasets from different liquefiable, non-liquefiable cases taken from different papers. So the various parameters which I have considered include depth, SPT number, densities, groundwater tables, fine content, the earthquake data, factor of safety, etc. So results and discussions. So when I have used, here M is the magnitude of earthquake. So when I have used k-fold linear regression, where in this regression technique, usually whatever data is available, the data set is actually divided into different groups, which are called as divided into k number of groups. And each group in that divided number of groups, a group is selected as for training or for testing, and other remaining k-1 number of groups are used for testing, for training. So finally, we'll arrive at a regression model, a regression equation. So these are RSME, R square, and MAE values of k-fold linear regression, and different equations are also obtained using MLR method also. Like I have used multilinear regression also, multiple linear regression analysis, where all the predictor variables are fed into the regression equation at once. And SLR model is a stepwise linear regression wherein we'll this is a kind of analysis where if there are various number of variables available, then we'll select we'll feed these variables one after one, and we'll try to find out a particular data set which is having highest impact factor. So this is the stepwise linear regression, and in table 2 you can see NVMax, where NVMax means the number of variables considered, and here 4 when we consider N60, fines content, groundwater table, and the magnitude of earthquake. This is giving the best result in predicting whether the soil is liquefiable or not. So when we compare these models between the observed values and the predicted values, the k-fold cross-validation is giving the best results, comparing its R square values, RMSE values, and MAE values. So this is the statistical comparison between the considered models, like multiple linear regression, stepwise linear regression, and k-fold cross-validation. So conclusions, I have actually worked on total 3 regression techniques. Out of these 3 regression techniques, k-fold cross-validation model is the best method among the considered regression techniques due to its reasonably good generalization capacity and lower values of RMSE and MAE. And 3 empirical expressions are also developed in this work. And from the analysis of obtained coefficients, it is found that SPT value and fines content are the most contributing parameters in occurrence of liquefactions. So these are my references. And thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sunil Kumar. Okay, it is very good because machine learning approach. So machine learning approach, can you explain in briefly just how it will be used for soil liquefaction studies, or how can you predict the soil liquefaction studies and what parameter? Based on what parameter? Sir,
we'll consider all parameters like SPT and values, magnitude of earthquake. Like machine learning has very good advantage. Like if a new parameter or new technique comes, and certain those parameters can be incorporated into our model, and more the data is, more refined the model will become, and more easily and accurately it can predict whether the soil can be liquefiable or not.
But you know that apart from SPT, there are CPT, cone penetration
Yes, sir.
TRO velocity model, or some other methods also there. So how can that method also will be included?
Yes, sir. Actually, now I'm working with the CPT, sir. Actually, I have only kept SPT data here, but now I'm working on CPT.
So particular area where liquefaction already occurred, you take this data and you can just simulate all these CPT, SPT, and CRO velocity. So then you can get a general trend. What is the parameter? What are the factors that liquefaction occurred, or what is the correlation between among these? So that your result and all the things will be very good again, appropriate, and much more appropriate later. So it is very good. Machine language, a new thought you have been given. It is good. So these young scientists should be go ahead. I appreciate your work. Okay, thank you, Mr. Sunil. We will ask some questions later on. We will get from the chat box, and then I will ask to you. Okay. So I'll call you on that day. So now last paper. Okay, last paper that by Dr. Jitin P. Jacharia. Okay. From Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee. So all are from Indian Institute of Technology. They're very good, nice presentation for this present. Now he is going to present liquefaction potential of ash pond using SPT. Okay, ash pond is also new thing. Okay, so you welcome, Mr. Jitin.
Thank you, sir. Myself Jitin P. Sakaria from Institute of Technology, Roorkee. So today I'm presenting a paper on liquefaction potential of ash pond using SPT. So I'm just taking an excuse, like if something interrupt my presentation because of it's raining since 2 days. So please excuse me if it happens. So I think there is no need to introduce liquefaction potential and liquefaction to anyone of us because all the presentation just before mine was explaining different definitions and displaying different outways of liquefaction. So let me start with the ash pond. The energy supply of many cities and of the part of the world was supplied by different power plants or thermal power plants. So in these power plants, what happens is we are using coal to burn to produce the energy. So if we are producing a huge amount of energy, we need a substantial amount of coal to be burned. And if we are burning a substantial amount of coal, it produces a huge amount of what we call as a waste or ash of this coal. So what we do with these ashes is we used to deposit these ashes to some places. So ash pond is something like a deposition of these ashes in slurry form to a nearby place of these thermal power plants. And if we can imagine what happens if we deposit a huge quantity of ash into some atmosphere or a nearby place, it goes to large amount of this environmental problems and other economical and health issues. So what we need to study is we need to use this ash. So rather than going with any new thing or new product, we need to study, or we should focus our studies on how we can use the things we have already or how we can reuse the waste. So what we thinking is for initially, let us try considering this using this ash or pond ash or ash ponds. So basic layout of an ash pond will be like this. There will be an inflow point and there will be some kind of outflow point, and we are depositing the ash in this point. Various studies has been done on this ash ponds and pond ashes, and it is studied that a mutual conclusion has been made by different authors. Like at inflow points and outflow points, we have different particle sizes, and it behaves like a cohesionless material, and it is susceptible to liquefaction. So before using this ash or pond ash or ash pond, we should study what is the liquefaction capacity of this thing. So the study focuses on that aspect. In this particular study, we have considered a power plant, Badarpur power plant in Delhi, which has a nearby ash pond of 3.5 square kilometer. So they have used the wet method, like a slurry deposit they have made for ashes, and we have studied that ash pond using standard penetration test. So by considering the geotechnical characterization of this pond ash, we observed that this ash pond is having a sand and silty type of particle size in line with the previous studies, and it is prone to liquefaction, and it is a non-plastic material. And we have considered 9 borehole tests at that particular ash pond, and we have got this. As we can see in the graph, we have got different borehole data, like SPT data, and we can see it is scattering, very much scattering these things are. So this shows that the particle or the deposit we are having is not having any uniform property. So that can lead to a possibility of liquefaction. I'm not saying that it is susceptible to liquefaction, but there can be possibility. When we take the liquefaction potential calculation, the basic procedure we know from ULITAL 2001, we are calculating the CSR, CRR. CSR is basically what the soil has or what the soil will do when something happens. What the earthquake do to the soil when the earthquake happens, and what is cyclic resistance is how the soil reacts or how the soil resists the earthquake which is coming to that. And we are calculating the factor of safety from those two correlations, and we have other factors like considering the findings, we have alpha and beta, and we are calculating the N160 based on the various corrections, and we have magnitude scaling factor for scaling up or down the magnitude of earthquake, since these equations are developed based on 7.5 magnitude of earthquake. So from these calculations, like we have calculated the CSR and CRR value. So to make the presentation shorter, I have skipped the calculation part, but we all are familiar with the calculation part. So I'm just going to the CSR and CRR part, and we can see from this interesting graph that the pink line shows the CRR, the resistance we can see. The CSR, the cyclic stress ratio, we can see this from this pink line. As we can see, like all the boreholes, borehole number 1 to 9, it is falling less or left side of this graph. That means the value of CRR is less than the value of CSR in most of the cases of all these boreholes. What that shows? It just shows that the resistance is less than the stress ratio. That means the soil is liquefiable. It can cause liquefaction, or the ash, to particular the pond ash. So we have considered a postulated magnitude of 7 earthquake and an Imax of 0.21 G. So to conclude, let me say what my observation is. We have the pond ash or pond ash site. So when we applied the SPT method of calculating liquefaction potential to the pond ash, we have observed that the pond ash is susceptible to liquefaction, or the pond ash is prone to liquefaction under the 7 magnitude earthquake. To reuse this pond ash or ash pond, I'm saying the word pond ash and ash pond separately because pond ash is the ash and ash pond is the total deposit. So to reuse whatever it is, the pond ash or the ash pond, we need to study a comprehensive liquefaction study on this material. The pond ash should be used as some kind of in huge large earth fills or kind of embankments kind of construction after doing some kind of stabilization or whatever it is. But there should be a way to mitigate, or there should be a way to strengthen that material. Similarly, when we come to ash pond can be used in kind of low load structures. Like we can make some small parks or small parking lots in these areas. Like they are having less number of loads. So it's a very vast area. So transporting all this pond ash to somewhere else, then we are trying to manage this ash pond as it is. So even though we are constructing that, we should study the liquefaction potential. From the studies, we have shown that this ash pond is also liquefiable. So we need to find the remedial method, like any method to mitigate the liquefaction of this ash pond to start any construction or before planning any construction. So this is the initial part of the study and an initial introduction to the study only. So the future studies are painting like how to mitigate liquefaction in pond ash, what are the different methods we can achieve, or what are the different ways we can do. So that's how I conclude that this ash pond and pond ash is very susceptible to, prone to liquefaction. Thank you.
Okay. Over. Is it over? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Jitin ji. You have explained very good, very nice way that ash pond, how it affects for liquefaction studies for different ground motion parameters. But there are many questions on these issues because as pond it is confined for a particular area. So if we preserve that, if the construction not going on that place, so how to use it? Now as means what is its plastic index? Because plastic index is the major thing to assess before to assess the liquefaction. So what is the plastic index? Because it may be, after some time, it may be it react as a clay type of formation or shell formation like this. So or it will be brittle something else. So for that, how it will be used for soil liquefaction studies, you have to be safe properly. You have to go for an investigation properly. And now magnitude of earthquake is also very important, because magnitude of earthquake you are taking at what source you are taking. Because you are explaining that Badarpur clay, okay, that thermal power plant and ash clays are deposited some places. So now you are using 7-point magnitude, okay, that places, and you are taking some SPTN values and then CRR correction, CSR correction, and then all is using the magnitude scale factor, you are using 1. Now MW for 7.5 you have 1, but MW 7.0 you have to be come from higher magnitude scale factor, maybe 1.1 or 1.12. So that you have also explained in these places. But anyway, it is very nice, and you have to go through the plastic index study. I will suggest you plastic index study, so that before to give some any conclusion, because liquefaction may be occur any place, anywhere. That depends upon the ground motion parameter and soil condition, porosity, permeability, and excess pore water pressure acquired within this sample. So by seeing all the environmental situation, deposition situation, whether it is a fresh alluvium or it is a aged, very aged, like Pleistocene age or Holocene age, geological time scale we have to see or check it properly, laboratory analysis for its grain size analysis. Then you come to the conclusion. So, but anyway, you have given a new thought, new knowledge. It is very nice for the young scientists, you, including you and us also. So I think all we have 5 presenters given a very well presentation within this season. Now I may say to my co-chair, where are you, co-chair, Mr. Mohanty? Dr. Mohanty sir?
Dr. Manoranjan, yeah, he's there.
Manoranjan.
Sure.
You
sure,
okay. So you have you gone through the chat box? You find what are the questions, probable questions for this session, for the different starting from SOP lectures by Professor Chandan Ghosh to our different lecturers here. Okay, so we have learned a lot of things through this durations. Now you say how many questions?
I think one question is there to Professor Chandan Ghosh.
One question. How realistic guest? Who is guest? Guest name is not given.
Yeah, guest. Yeah.
Guest is. So how realistic, sir? This question for Professor Chandan Ghosh, sir. How realistic is lab experiment compared to the field?
So yes, it is all related to the field.
Yes, sir.
Only try to visualize that in a simple lab experiment. All effort in geotechnical engineering, especially related to what engineering is, whatever we are seeing in the field, our effort is to recreate the same thing in the laboratory, so that we are able to project, predict, and think and understand. So here, all these experiments through the simplistic manner with bottle that they have been shown, they are showing their pore pressure increment, and which is measured in terms of increase in water height, where pore pressure height is nothing but it is pore pressure divided by gamma into H. So whatever height is there, so that is being measured here directly from the observation.
I think our guest is also can understand that liquefaction, how it lab and field. But Professor Ghosh explained it very nicely, and he has demonstrated very nicely 9 samples, and I really appreciate, sir, and I salute you for that, your work. Now, next question, sir, one I have received from Dr. Ajit Prakash Pandey, that he mentioned long sentences that I have to read it. I would like to know how come the tamping is ensured, sum of all the bottle during the experiment for creating similar condition. Second, Sir, similar question. Secondly, question is rubber balls coming out of the buried position or tamping signifies what? Sir, I think, do you, sir, understand that question?
Yeah. I have replied also.
Okay.
In fact,
you have replied also. Sir, just if you say a few sentences to us, so we can, will be highly enjoyable, sir.
Okay. So mainly tamping is being done just on a small bottle or large bottle manually by this. So several experiments have been done. So I know what is my strength. I know how much tamping that I can give. So several experiments after doing that, it becomes more handy that how much pressure that I have to give. So with that, whatever observation is coming, and all those observations are being video recorded. So any variation, which may be, there will be some variation, but our effort is not that how much variation is happening over here, but getting this tamping effect onto the soil behavior from loose state to the compaction that it is happening during this tamping. So that way, more is observational things that whatever we are observing in the bottle is more interesting than how much variation is happening. After all, it is under similar condition, all the tests have been done. And moreover, in order to reduce the effect of manual tamping, which cannot be measured in this manner, which is rather more explained or exemplified in the observation, the changing that occurring in the pore water pressure height, the height of the column, and also that kind of depression that happening, compaction that happening, which are physically measured and then which have been plotted in the experiment. So in that case, in order to reduce this manual tamping, which is rightly questioned, we have done all tests on the vibration table with controlled frequency and amplitude. So there then it is becoming, at least we have got the control on the energy input. So this much. And second thing is what that rubber ball coming from the soil coming up, which I have explained that where from inspiration comes, many of the facilities, underground utilities or facility, they come up. And they come up, especially the sewage drain or underground drain or utility pipeline, when they are founded in liquefiable soil, which during construction we may neglect or we have not known that much, or not even compaction is not enough. Site conditions makes them to come up. So that ball which is placed inside, as I said, during the sample preparation also, the rubber ball which is chosen in such a way that whenever the bottle is made like this, then that ball will remain inside. So that reveals that underground utility, how they come up due to the liquefaction. And overground, whatever it is a building, something like that, a pin, iron pin hinged with that rubber ball, which will make as a upright building which is standing on a liquefiable soil, which comes down due to the liquefaction. And but that how much it is coming down, because that tip is not regulated, soil consistency is not regulated. So how much it is coming down with this small scale experiment with only tip, which has hardly any area or any kind of thing. We have not gone into how much it is coming down that overground structure, because this will not give, ideally it is coming down, that we can see how much it is coming down, but we have given more importance to the amount of soil that which is getting compacted, especially in case of liquefiable soil, and also side by side observing that no liquefaction is happening in the stone dust, or even no liquefaction in coarse sand or even pebble. So that is a 9 different experiments done in the same way. Only Yamuna sand, the last point that I mentioned, it is highly liquefiable, and rest of the things, they are not in between. So it is just to see that how Yamuna sand is liquefiable. So we have to take into non-liquefiable soil also, which is known to our geotechnical engineering. It is for comparison's sake that how they are behaving. Like pebbles, they are not going to liquefy. Even ball, that which is inside, they will not come out. So all these things, just for visualization and experience sake, they have been demonstrated. In case of clayey soil, it is not going to. In fact, clayey soil, when it is disturbed like this, it takes a day to settle down. But the ball that which is remain, it is remain inside, it doesn't come out. So this simple experiment showed us that how to visualize the phenomena that which happens during liquefaction.
Sir, from this we have came to know that very good that it is a demonstration how the liquefaction occurred with the buildings and the piles, foundation are kept inside. So how the transfer load of the head transfer to the base, and if the soil liquefied, then how it will be come out, okay, tilting or something else. So it is a good demonstration, sir, and we will really appreciate. And I think among the world side, you are the only among many world scientists you have demonstrated in very in casual way, and it is very good. Like shaking table, we try to understand what magnitude we get at Earth, feeling of this Earth. Similar thing you have been experimental and you have been done in practical, and it is good, sir. And I hope, sir, your near future is very bright, and you will do many things in near future, and you are very potential and dynamic towards this liquefaction, because interest is very important, sir. Interest, many people never take interest. I know liquefaction, but I have no that type of demonstration. But so that interest is, I really appreciate, sir. So I thank you, sir. Now I am not finding any question for our presenters. I think all the presenters have nicely presented here. And whatever question or some queries I asked, you can improve further your studies, and you can do research further as a young scientist by your relevant subjects, and so to our Indian country that we can do as a lot. Okay, and you publish this to the reputed journal, and that is my wishes to all of you. And now I may ask you, Manoranjan, my co-chair.
So there is a question. So there is a question to Jiten Jacharya. Okay. From Dr. Ajit P. Pandey. So how could you justify 0.21 G for MW7 plus? I guess you consider such large event in Himalaya for your study. However, in case of a local event around M6.0 locally, you may simulate the results and its behavior.
Yes. Actually, I can answer of this question because I have asked many questions to him. Because this he has taken from empirical relation, maybe 0.21. It is a practically he used. He is not giving any hindrance about this. Just he explained that 2.1 may be possible of this, because zone factor you also know that 0.24 for Delhi, maybe Faridabad, maybe 0.21. So that basis he has also taken 0.21 or 0.24. So doesn't matter for that. Magnitude he has taken as 7. Maybe magnitude scale factor will increase. That I already asked to him. So it is just his data, and I think he can improve by whatever a question or question is asked. So he can improve on that way. Okay. So anything that question for Arnab or some other?
Jiten,
can you say something about this, Mr. Jiten?
Yes,
Dr. Jiten?
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
Come your camera on.
Yeah. Dr. Ajit, regarding magnitude 7 and 0.21 G, at Delhi region, where we have the zone of 4, we have generally in the new IS code versions we are using 0.24, and previous one I think we have used 0.21. And considering the 7 magnitude, generally in seismic studies from literature, seismic studies in Delhi are considered 7.5, nearly 7.5 magnitude in Delhi, particular in Delhi region from literatures. So we are considering somewhat on a safer side, or somewhat, even though we have a low magnitude of earthquake, we have this kind of problem or the prone to liquefaction. That is what we considered. For advanced studies, we should consider the more reliable values of this magnitude and Amax.
Yes, it is a, you see, whenever you will study for liquefaction, that this type of question always raised. So you have to be take some improved result. Okay. So yes, it is a valid question. Yes. Whatever Dr. Rojit Prakash Pandey asked.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I understand the question here.
Okay. So you have to improve your study also, because these are all societal effect. This is the societal impact. Okay. This is
yes, sir. Yes,
solve it. So how to solve it? This is the conference media. We can suggest everybody's decision. We have to take and improve your result, and that
exactly
for the society. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for it. So any other question for other presenters?
No more questions.
Okay, then I may ask to our co-chair, you say something about whatever today's presentation, our presentees, and then we have later hand over to these two Sri Salvasa or coordinator.
Thank you, sir, for giving me this opportunity. And actually, the SOP lecture by Professor Chandan Ghosh has been excellent, and he was my sir also at the BHU. For some time I had registered under him for PhD, but could not complete. Later on, I did it from IIT Roorkee. Anyway, so sir has given a very simple explanation of a very complex problem, and in a very crude manner, or without using any sophisticated equipment. So that is his greatness and his great conception of the things. And the presentation by all 5 research scholars, I think, have been very actually effective, and it is also very. They have given very beautiful conceptual approach to their studies. So I thank them all on behalf of the organizers that they have within their short time span, they have been able to present their research findings very beautifully. So with this, I would like to thank the organizer for giving us this opportunity to share such a beautiful and informative session. And thanking you all. I again hand over the platform to the chairman to say something.
Thank you, Dr. Manoranjan. You have explained very concise manner and explained about the Professor Chandan Ghosh and others and organizers. It's very good. So Professor Dr. Manoranjan talked last 2 days to me, just telephonic, and he said, "So, sir, I am some medical ground, some problems are there." So I told him, no problem, I am with you, and we have to be there, and we have to integrated manner. You have to successful our session if the net connection and everything are feasible for us. Because yesterday I have also some all time electricity is going and coming like this. Okay, off and on like this. So I thought that what will happen for our session, I do not know. But God, everything made it successful. Now I thanks to the organizer, Professor Sitaram, Professor P.G. Sitaram sir. He is a very renowned professor and director of IIT Guwahati. He has coincided this international seminar. I have that first day inauguration. I have seen that he has explained all the things that this event supposed to be organized in Bangalore in the 2020 in this year. So it is 1 year delay, and say so by delay, but it is a good and comprehensive, and it is a good platform he has made it. And by not least this, I have to say that Dr. Ravi Jaka, Professor Ravi Jaka is very good, energetic and enthusiastic to do this work, and his team members within whoever the professors in IIT Roorkee, they are all time giving support, and any problem to I have seen that any persons, so they are giving full support to the all, and it is a very good, concise and fruitful, successful this session we have been concluded, and all the presenters and are presented very nicely. So I hope near future you will do good things. But you have to be keep in touch. Keep in touch means with your exercise. You should not leave this, because whatever, suppose I am getting award PhD, then I have left all the things. I have received PhD and then I have left a research paper and all the things, because whatever the guide or I have done on that time, I have left it. Okay, leave it. So no, you have to be just continuity. You touch in with your research work, and I think near future you will be an eminent scientist, engineer, whatever you like that you can do, and that will be the benefit of our society, for our country, because we are lacking so many things in our country for liquefaction studies. But I will say, you take your data genuine, so that nobody can ask any question against your data. So data you prepare in a so fruitful manner that, and you explain, you study literature subject, everything, so that maybe improve your results and all the things.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Now I also just say thanks to our Srivar sir. He's all time is supporting us.
Ready.
Okay, he's very he's managing so hectic manner and so busy. So I also thank to Srivar sir. Okay, and then I have to hand over our session to Srivar sir for next year course of action.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Dr. Mandal sir, for conducting the session very dynamic and energetic manner. You have brought in a lot of energy to the session. So thank you a lot for very efficiently managing the session and engaging the presenters and participants. And thanks to Dr. Manoranjan Samal for being with us as a co-chair and very effectively managing the session and for summarizing the session presentations. And also thanks to Professor Chandan Ghosh for delivering an excellent, very practically relevant lecture on liquefaction demonstration inside the laboratory. It is one of its kind work. So thank you, sir, for the excellent presentation and lecture. And also thanks to all the technical presenters. All the presentations were very, very efficient and lot of knowledge it has brought in. So thanks to Manali, Gautam, Aparna, Sunil Kumar, and Jitin Sakaria. So thanks to all the presenters and thanks to all the participants. I am informed by the platform developer that around 118 people are watching this live. So thanks to all the listeners for being with us. So this session is very wonderful because all the presenters were present on time and we started on time and we are ending on sharp 1 p.m. So thank you. We formally end this session. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.